Welcome back to the Becoming Her podcast. Dr. Ann and I are back with another Double Trouble
What I love
episode.
about
This is there's so much power because there's so many things that you and I can talk about that fit and jive really well together that, obviously our listeners going to going to really connect with. And same thing with Bouquet. And so there's going to be episodes where we're all together. There's going to be solo episodes. There's going to be episodes where maybe just you and Bouquet. And that's what I love about this is just all of our strengths commingle and they all speak the same language, right? And they
yes.
just all come together so well. So we have, and I know I'm probably going to say this every episode, but another heater of an episode. And actually, Dr. Ann came up with this topic. And the second she said this, I'm like, fire. Yes, we need to come and talk about this because there's just so much power behind this. And we titled this Burnout and Boredom. And Ann and I were talking before we hit the record button, and we both have very different, we're saying the same things, but very different ways, I guess, of how we approach this, maybe. And I think there's a lot of power to both sides of this. And I'm going to let you kick it off, Ann, because like I said, this was kind of like your mastermind and you came up with this, and I'm going to interject in areas that I see fit. But I know you were saying with burnout and boredom, where your patient struggles, kind of just lead in for us. And I'm going to piggyback off on some of this stuff. So
Yeah. So when I hear people talk about burnout, boredom is usually in relationship to exercise, but also some of the routine of, my gosh, therapy, recovery, nailing the process behind doing things, right? So I'm tired of either reporting things. I'm tired of working on challenge foods. I'm tired of exercise. Now, I do have a running statement about exercise, and this is something that I personally live by. I used to compulsively exercise. I was an athlete back in school, and when you engage in something compulsively, you can get burned out really fast, and it gets really exhausting. You almost dread the exercise. And so my running statement, and I will live by this, I will die by this statement, that if you are hating exercise, you are doing it wrong. And it doesn't mean that your heart isn't in the right place and that you don't have good intentions, but rather exercise is meant to actually fill up our bucket and energize us and move us towards something positive in our life.
I
And
totally
there's,
agree. I feel like so many, and I want to interject right here because I feel like this is
yeah,
really powerful. They treat exercise as a punishment instead of a reward of what our bodies can do, right? And so it's
yes,
perceived as just uh, I have to be miserable. I have to drive my body into the ground. It has to hurt. And if it's not any of those things, then I'm not working hard enough kind of concept. And so therefore it is quote unquote a punishment instead of utilizing it and viewing it as holy crap, I am so capable of so many things. It's just perceived in a completely different light.
yes, yes. And on that same note, part of that punishment is that, like, I hate my body and therefore it deserves to be miserable, and I have to be miserable in order to get to where I need to be. And what's interesting about that is that research actually shows that exercise done specifically for weight loss is not long-term exercise. It's not
Nope,
sustainable.
it's not.
And because what we do is we hit that magic number. It's kind of like diets, right? You hit that magic number and you're like, oh, I can take a break now. I don't have to do this miserable thing that I've been dying.
Yeah.
And my running, and I love people who run. I think you're amazing. If you're a runner, that's wonderful for you. I tried really, 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 really hard to love running for years, did half marathons and 5Ks and fun runs and tried to make it exciting. But at the end of it, all I thought the entire time that I ran was, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. I can't wait until it's over. I never got the runner's high.
And I'm curious, were you doing it because that's what you thought you needed to do to lose weight, or are you doing it because you wanted to fit into the runners club? What were your intentions behind it?
A little bit of both, but some of it was because I was a swimmer growing up, and I loved the activity, but I couldn't get to a pool with lots of kids, and so running was
Mm,
something that was fast and was easy for me to get to and easy for me to do. But I do not enjoy it, but I tried to enjoy it so hard, and it just wasn't me.
yeah.
And after years of doing this and years of literally, I asked friends who are runners, how do you do it? And they're like, yeah, isn't it great when you get runner's high? I thought I was doing it wrong because I was like, I never get that. I don't even know what you're
You're
talking
like,
about.
what the
Like
heck is
what
runner's high? You're like, this is
what
miserable.
what number do you get? Like, how many miles do you have to get in before you get that? I was thinking maybe I got to do like a full marathon or something. That like drove me nuts, right? And what I realized is that it wasn't really a good fit for me. Now, part of this is that we could be doing something that isn't a good fit But part of it also might be what our focus is. And our focus, the motivation behind something can make or break it. We can,
Mhm.
I say this to people all the time, you can compulsively exercise for 15 minutes and you can healthfully exercise for 4 hours. What's the difference?
Mm.
And the only difference is the motivation behind it.
Yep.
So if I'm compulsively exercising, I'm miserable the entire time. I'm dreading it. I'm just doing it to manage the calories that I consumed or manage, like thinking that that's what I have to do in order to eat. And when I'm healthfully exercising, I'm loving the experience. Either I love it when I finish because I have that endorphin rush, because I got my needs met, because I was out in the countryside. And part of that trick of that is that we have to pay attention to what it is that we're focused on while we're doing it. And very much like me, if you're doing something you legitimately hate, there's so many different forms of exercise you can do to
100%.
make things exciting and fun.
Mhm.
Now,
Totally agree with
can we spice up strength training? Like a lot of us have to do the strength training, especially as we age.
that. Mhm.
We can do it and we can add in things and we can make it exciting and we can try to like stretch ourselves. But again, it's about that focus. What is it that I'm focused on? If I'm focused on doing it and just bearing through it and seeing how many calories I burned, or I'm only doing it simply to lose weight, we're not going to hang on to it, but we're also not learning how to effectively enjoy it or cope with it. And that's going to lead to burnout. And that will also really fast lead to boredom.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw a different spin on this because, like I said, Ann and I were talking, and I get asked so many times in and around the most effective ways to achieve goals or most effective ways. And one of the number one questions I get is, Nicole, cardio or weights or cardio, what do I do first? And my response is always the same. I'm always like, well, what's your goals, right? At the end of the day, what are your goals? And 95% of females that come to me, their goals are body recomp. At the end of the day, they want a body they feel confident in, right? Like they want to lose body fat, they want to change the way that their body looks. And don't get me wrong, we do have athletes on our team, and somebody who's training for a sport or for performance is a completely different approach than somebody who's training for body comp, right? And body like for recomp. And so my first question is always, what are your goals? At the end of the day, what are those goals? And we need to make sure that actions are in alignment with those goals. However, most people, again, I would say 95% of the babes that come to me, their goals are body recomp, but what they think needs to happen for body recomp and what really needs to happen are two very, very, very different things. And I usually preach this concept of, I'm going to challenge the results that you are desperate for are found in the boredom that you particularly don't want to participate in, right? Because one of my favorite things is when my girls come to me, particularly like as we start to, a lot of times females are overtraining, they're under fueling, right? And that's where the lack of the results that they're looking for are coming in. And so when they come in and I kind of flip their whole world upside down, I give them more food, I actually pull back their crazy excessive amounts of cardio. We start training in a way, AKA strength training is the only way that you will shape your body, right? It's the only way you're going to change the way that your body looks. It's a non-negotiable. And so when we start to take this approach, a really common theme is, Nicole, I'm bored, because they're so used to these high intensity classes, you know, a different workout every single day. And it's just like, and my response is back, fire. I love that. Are we looking to be entertained, or are we looking for results, in the sense of you're so desperate, like the result, you're so desperate for that result, but yet we struggle with the quote unquote boredom piece of it because it's the repetitive piece, right? And we feel like, and this is again, just different ways of viewing this, but toxic diet culture is, if you're not driving your body into the ground, if it doesn't hurt, if you're not miserable, you're not working hard enough. And so that's what a lot of females almost crave, right? Because if they walk out of the gym and it's like, wheel me out of here kind of concept, I'm absolutely just I'm miserable, I hurt, like that means like, that's almost like a pat on the back, gold star. Like I worked really, really hard. And so that usually comes from these high intensity classes, these HIIT sessions, right? That just leave us absolutely white. Orange Theory, F45, you're burning your, what do they call it in Orange Theory? It's like splat points. And it's one of our coaches on our team, Crystal, who's just fire, but she was an Orange Theory instructor for 5 years. And she's like, Nicole, the amount of women that would come in, these workouts were different every single day. And women usually love that, right? Because they like to mix it up and they think we have to confuse muscles. And she's like, the amount of women that would come in, you know, every single day, and they would just put so much energy and effort into this, but they never did anything to their body at all. And so there's a strategy behind how to actually change the way that your body looks. And so I feel like personally, there is an area of what Anne says, you absolutely have to enjoy what you're doing. If you're like she said, if you are exercising, because I usually use the word training with intent, but if you're exercising and you're hating everything about it, then you're not doing it correctly. And a big piece of that could be the lack of, you're just not fueling your body correctly. So you're miserable because your body's just like not fueled and it doesn't want to do the damn thing. And there's a big piece of that. And we'll dive into that here in a second. But if you absolutely hate what you're doing, the reality is it will never be sustainable. And if you're not consistently doing the thing, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're not going to reap the rewards that come with that. So there's a space of, yes, you need to be enjoying what you're doing, and you need to there needs to be a space of looking forward to what your body can do and hitting these different PRs and hitting these different goals. And that excites you. And there's just a lot of, there's a lot of excitement in and around it. But are you going to say something?
The focus. Yeah. Shifting the focus.
Yes. That's a better way of putting it. I was like searching for words. I'm like trying to come up with the right words, but shifting the focus is a really great way of putting it. But there also needs to be a space of, we need to get comfortable with the boredom piece of it. Because ultimately at the end of when I say boredom, I mean the repetition piece of it.
Yes.
Right. And that's what I mean by that.
The consistency piece.
Yes.
Right. And so, and in that consistency, it's kind of like what we do. I'll speak for myself and not for anybody else. What we do as moms, we make dinner every single night. We check our kids' homework. We ask them how they're doing. We check in with them. We ask them where you're going, and hey, we got chores to do. And when you have teenagers, I don't know, you get to that place where you're like, okay, this is either going to be an argument or we're going to have some consequences, or it's going to go fine this time.
Yeah, he's going to be 13 this next week, but he's 13 going on 21. So y'all know,
yes.
you know.
Yes.
I know that.
Yes. But it's like, there's a part of that process that showing up sometimes even as a parent can be kind of boring. It's not terribly exciting, like when they're little and they're seeing everything for the first time and they're tasting everything for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's what I call, where things get kind of painful as parents is when we keep showing up doing the same thing and we get crabbiness in response, but you still show up and you do it. So that can
like a relationship too, right? Like a new relationship, you got the honeymoon phase or the lovebirds, that quote unquote wears off, and then real life sets in. And it's just like, if we were to take our health and fitness and treat that, and as we treat our health and fitness and put that in any other aspect of our life, 98% of people would fail. And right? Like you're talking your relationships with your spouse, with your kids, with your friends, like there's a space of just normalcy where the newness and the funness and the exciting wears off. And there comes, you know what I mean? Just the day-to-day of what that is. And that's such a great way of putting it.
And what's interesting about that is I also work with athletes that have hit their PR, and there's, and they're now at a place where work is taking so much time that they don't have the energy to train. And they feel really bad about that. And they feel like they suck and that it's not good enough. And, and if I didn't hit my PR on this, I'm like, take the time out of it, enjoy the race, go and meet with all of the people, do something in that experience where you're giving out to other people, because that challenges you to do something and grow some character stuff. Right. So it's not that we lack it, but it's like, if you see somebody out there in a race and they're really struggling, you coming alongside them and saying, dude, you're doing a great job. I'm going to run with you for a moment. What do you like about this weather? I'm going to provide that distraction for that person. But in that moment, what we are actually managing is our own boredom. We are managing, we're shifting the focus of what it is that actually challenges us and how we can grow in a different avenue. And so, do we have to consistently train for things? I mean, I was a competitive swimmer. I trained most of my year for the events that I had. And it does get really repetitive. It does, but that process leads to where it is that we want to go. And the same thing for what you're talking about, that process leads, but we have to cope with it effectively. And if your idea of coping with it was like my idea of coping with it, this sucks. I can't wait until this is over. Literally for a half marathon worth of. Oh, there go my dogs.
No, you're fine. And we told you guys, this podcast is all about you feeling like you're sitting in the living room with us, having a cup of coffee. This is not the most high production podcast. That's not the goals of this. So you get all the things that come with that. So welcome to the Becoming Her podcast.
welcome to the dogs. They usually are up, but we've got people over today. So they are. But it took me the longest time to realize that I was doing it wrong. And I thought that I was doing it correctly. I thought like this is really stress relieving, but really what it was is I needed to be outside. I needed to be doing something with my body that relieved stress, that was growing me,
Yep.
but that wasn't it, right? And so if, and again, we do need to do strength training. So if we're going to do it, it's kind of like raising our teenagers. You got to find something in it that you like.
Yep.
And that's a coping skill to learn how to do that.
And just because you need to be strength training doesn't mean strength training is the only thing you do, right? So being able
Yes.
to, it's the same thing with our nutrition, being able to understand how to eat the foods that we need and combine the foods that we love, right? There is that balance to it. And so while yes, strength training is a non-negotiable, particularly as we age, ladies, like we're starting to lose muscle mass. We need to sustain and maintain the muscle mass that we do have. The goal should be to add muscle to your frame, but that doesn't mean that that's all you do, right? That needs to be a component of what you do, but being able to maybe, do 2 to 3 days a week of strength training. And if it's the Zumba class, or if it's the bike riding, or if it's the hiking, this is about moving your body in a way that feels good and something that you truly enjoy, that gives you something to look forward to. And so like Anne said, if you're running because you feel like you have to run to quote unquote lose weight, that's just such the ass backward approach, because there's so many things that you could do that you actually enjoy, that you don't feel miserable with the entire freaking time. And so that's such a great way of looking at it.
And I want to piggyback things that I have heard you said, and I see all over your social media. This is really shifting your lifestyle, right? So the reason why we keep foods that you love in what you're doing, the reason why we insist on cakes and cookies and candies and all the ability to eat all of the things, is the same reason why we need to work on exercise as a lifestyle process. We're not going out to walk our steps because we're miserable and we're burning calories. We're going out to walk our steps because we need more physical activity that is healthy for us.
Yep. Celebrating what our bodies can do. Yes. And it's cultivating, and I talk about this all the time, cultivating the values that are in alignment with the person that you want to become, because until these are ingrained in you and their values, something that we believe to be really important, if we're just doing something because that's what we think we have to do to lose weight, it will never work sustainably long-term. And if anything, it's going to cause resentment, right? Like that resentment as you're doing these things build up. And then this is where so many people get stuck in the cycle of, I lost a bunch of weight just to gain it back. Just because, like Anne said, the second that you lost the 20 pounds, you're like, I was miserable the whole time. I hated running the whole time, but that's what I thought I had to do to lose the weight. So when you lost the 20 pounds, you stop running because it was miserable. And then it's like, obviously movement decreases the chances of you putting that weight back on. And then you're like, well, shit, for me to lose the 20 pounds again, I have to be miserable. I have to go back to running. And that's where the yo-yo comes into play.
And that isn't lifestyle compatible. Like
No.
that isn't right. So not enjoying something for years, you can do it. I did it. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't recommend it because it's not something that we want to look at in the future as doing. I never saw myself in the future continuing to hate every moment of running. Again, I love you runners. But for me, it wasn't it. Right. And so that's that change. And that's one of the things that I love so much about the program that you have, is that ability to acknowledge this has to be a lifestyle shift. This cannot be a short term. And because it can't be a short term thing, there are some ways that we have to learn how to cope with it.
100%. Actually, it's funny that you brought up the whole running thing, because just this past year, I got back into running. So when I first started my journey, I was one of those who ran because that's like what the cool people did, right? That lost weight. And I wanted to be a part of the cool people club. And that's just, the best way to burn as many calories as you possibly can. So I got wicked into running, and I was the girl that was running 60, 70 miles a week. And I was miserable the whole time doing it, because it was a process, or it was a thought process of punishing myself. It was always, how many calories can I burn? And every single time that I started a run, it was like, okay, well, I burned X amount of calories last run. And those calorie counters are so widely, they're just not accurate at all either, right? So side note there, squirrel. But I was always trying to burn more calories than I did the last time, or run faster than I did the last time or farther than I did the
Mhm.
last time. And I was underfueled. I was driving my body into the ground. I hurt the whole time. I wasn't recovering. I wasn't sleeping. I was bloated and miserable. My digestion was off because I was so underfed and I was overtraining. My hair was falling out in chunks. I was miserable doing it. And so this is the yo-yo effect of me, right? Like I gained and lost, gained and lost, gained and lost. And I actually started picking it back up this year, not because not because I felt like that's what I need to do to lose weight, but just honestly for the heart health benefits of it. And I have goals to
Mhm.
possibly do another Spartan. So I'd done a Spartan. And so I started picking running back up as just a way to start working on my cardiovascular strength. And it's so crazy the shift of when I was doing it prior to the food component of it is huge. Like that's a huge component of it. But also I no longer do it as a form of punishment or because I have to. I do this because it's something that I want to do. And just that tiny shift alone has made a dramatic difference. And now it's like mixing up my training. I mean, as crazy it sounds coming from the girl that preaches strength training, I've been looking forward to my runs more than I have my strength train just because it's just been a fun new addition for me. And it's
That's
something that I'm doing to celebrate, right? Like this is what my body can do. And so it's so exciting when I was like, oh, I just shaved a mile off of that, 3 miles this time or a minute off of that 3 miles. And I'm celebrating those things, not because it's like, oh, I'm trying to burn more calories or whatever, just because I'm celebrating those things of my body's like, I'm getting quicker. I'm getting more efficient and it's exciting. So the mindset shift in it is just a completely different space this time around. And it allows me to enjoy it so much more. And so, like you said, like there's such a piece, the mental piece is absolutely everything when we're doing any aspect of this journey. The mental piece plays the biggest role. And if we can't tackle this, I talk about this all the time, it just doesn't matter. I can give you the best training split, the best macro program. It just nothing will work for you long term. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's been a really fun comparison from when I used to quote unquote consider myself a runner because that's what I thought I had to do versus now. And I'm not nearly running 60 miles a week, but I do
Yeah.
3-mile runs a couple times a week and I'm just really enjoying it. And it's just a completely different space.
Well, and what I want to piggyback this because, and I just had this discussion just earlier today, that when we love our bodies and learning how to love our bodies is a process, especially in America. America is very, very body shaming, very anti loving yourself as you are.
1,000%. Yeah.
And I don't mean that we can't want to change some things about our body, right? This doesn't, so I think there are kind of these two camps. Like if I love myself just as I am, I should be fine. Just as I am, I should not want to change anything about myself. In this other camp where I have to hate my body and I do hate my body, and then therefore I want to change it. And we got to hit somewhere in the middle
A
where,
great area. We can
and
love our bodies and still have things that we want to improve and work
yeah,
on. Yes.
I'll offer something here. But think about our spouses. Um, and if we're being really honest about our spouses, we don't love everything about our spouses. And if you do, please come and talk to me because you have found the perfect person. Uh, and usually we love them, but there are things that annoy us. We have little pet peeves. We have things that we wish we could change, or things that we are wanting to change and that
My
need to
husband's
change.
probably listening to me, not me, honey. No, 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 no.
And think about when we show up in love with our spouses, we do things that are very loving towards them. We have special moments. We prioritize time with them. We're taking care of them. We're talking to them kindly. And think about our bodies. And if we hate our bodies, we're not taking care of it. We're punishing it. We're being nasty to it. We're not fueling it correctly. We're not putting in the time and effort to make food that fuels us well. And so learning to love our body and what it can do, exercise is a component of healthy self-care.
Yes. Yep. And your puppy agrees. Totally agrees. Perfect timing. And I do love that the saying, exercise really is a celebration of what your body can do. It shouldn't be perceived as a punishment. And I know that that can sound cliche and cheesy, but there's so much validity to that. And if I feel like if more people celebrated what their body could truly do, they would enjoy this so much more, instead of like, this is what I have to do and it has to be miserable. And that's the way I feel like most people view exercise. And that's why it's so miserable. And so, yeah, I feel like there's different ways of spinning the whole. I feel like there's a lot of power to allowing yourself to be bored and
Yes.
mastering the process and nailing the consistency piece of it, and allowing, because I do think there's a lot of people that are constantly looking for the excitement and the mix up, and like the amount of people in influence areas I see on social media, we want to confuse our message. Like that's just not a thing if we're talking real results. So there's a space of allowing yourself to sit in the boredom, but there's also a place of, if it becomes so monotonous and so miserable that you can't enjoy what you're doing, then there's something wrong with that as well. So I think there's a middle ground of this boredom piece that we need to be able to master, to be able to achieve not just our goals, but long-term sustainable results. And so I do think I want to shift over now to the burnout piece of this, because I feel like obviously you and I have very, very similar viewpoints when we're talking burnout. And usually when females come to me in a space of burnout, it is because all they know is extreme. That's all they
Yes.
know. They've never
Yes.
allowed themselves to be bored, right? Like they've never allowed themselves to sit in a space of boredom where, and I talk about this often, most females who come to me, it's either they're losing weight or they're gaining weight. They have
Mhm.
no idea how to live in the middle of sustaining and maintaining. And sustaining and maintaining is the boredom piece, right? That's when we're mastering the basics. That's when we're doing the things, and we get to our body to a place where we feel good, and we're learning how to maintain that aspect of it. But for most females, it's black or it's white. We're losing or we're gaining. And the losing comes in spaces of extreme. And then the gaining comes back or comes in when we can't keep up with the extreme. And so I would love to hear your thoughts and kind of piggyback off of this, because that is definitely probably 85% of females that come to us.
Yeah, and interesting that we're kind of echoing this with burnout is usually a complete lack of self-care and a complete lack of healthy boundaries and limits. Um,
Mm, mm.
when I don't know,
Say that
and
again,
it
because that was, ladies, write that down. That was a mic drop moment.
burnout is, well, gosh, now I can't even remember it. Replay this. Um, but
The lack of
burnout,
self boundaries, though, is what I love, because so many, I feel like a lot of women struggle with boundaries.
yes, lack of self-care and inability to set healthy boundaries. That's
Yes.
what burnout is about. And it is something that is very common in our field. We talk about caregiver burnout. We talk about therapist burnout. We talk about compassion fatigue. All of it's kind of the same thing. The reason we get there is we lose sight of ourselves as human beings and our needs. And so when we're doing too much for other people, when we're doing too much to hit a goal, when we're being too crazy about this goal, and we think that we've got to do 2 hours of running or 2 hours of walking in the night, again, it doesn't fit into our life. We're not doing date nights. We're going out and we're not having chips at the Mexican restaurant that
Mhm.
we love, right? We're not learning how to incorporate those things. What happens is we get really exhausted with it. And I hear people talk about this all the time in lots of different ways. I think one of the more extreme cases that I helped somebody with was related to work burnout and compassion
Yeah.
fatigue. And it was, post the COVID nonsense and trying to work through that and that kind of stuff. And they wound up getting to a place where they had to quit their job because their job wasn't allowing them to put healthy boundaries in place.
Mm.
And it was 6 months of feeling burned out, exhausted, unable to cope. And after 6 months, and we worked on a lot of self-care, we worked on a lot of this stuff. After 6 months, they were able to get back into a different job and start getting some energy. But that moment in time for them was horrible. And they kept, they were coming in. How long is this going to take? I don't know, but you're tired, you're burned out. Like it's going to take a bit because you've been writing for too long, doing too much.
I always like to say boundaries aren't meant to push people away. They're meant to like push people out. They're meant to keep people in. And I
Mhm.
feel like particularly as females, we have a hard time setting boundaries with ourselves, right? Like, because we wear all of these different hats. Like you talk about mom, wife, maid, chauffeur, therapist. We're all these different things to all these different people. But in the midst of all of that, we lose sight of being anything for ourselves. And so we lack the personal boundaries and the self boundaries that we need to be able to show up as the best possible version for everybody else around us. And so I get told often, it's like, well, we work with a lot of females. It's like everybody else's needs come before my own because they're the most important thing, right? Like my husband's the most, my kids are particularly my kids. And it's like, how can you be everything else for everyone else if you're nothing for yourself, right? How are you supposed to show up as the best possible mom, the best possible spouse, the best possible coworker, whatever the case may be, if you can't show up for yourself? It's quite literally impossible. It is impossible. And what happens is I feel like we lack self-love because we lack self-trust, and we lose trust in ourselves because when we don't have boundaries and we're not keeping those promises and those commitments, we break the promise. We don't keep those for ourselves. And so therefore we don't trust ourselves. And if we don't trust ourselves, we can't really love ourselves. And so there's so much of this that's so interconnected, and being able to, I'll forever be grateful for my mentor. That man not just changed my life, that man saved my life. But the biggest blessing that he ever gave me was the ability, A, to get really radically honest with myself, but B, set boundaries. And setting boundaries more so started with myself. Setting boundaries for myself was the biggest place to start. And then that enabled me to set boundaries around the people closest to me. And I was so afraid that it was going to push them away. But if anything, it brought them closer in, and they respected me more for that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts here.
Yeah, what you were actually describing is the difference between codependency and responsibility. And
Mm-hmm.
when we grow up, and I call it the game of in family systems playing almost like duck, duck, goose. So it's my job to take care of my parents' needs or my sister's needs or my brother's needs or my dad's needs or whatever this is, right? And hopefully then they'll take care of somebody else's needs, and eventually it will come back around to me. Right. And when we grow up in families where it's my job to make sure that everybody else is okay, what happens is that I don't learn how to accept responsibility for myself. And in families where codependency runs rampant, that is actually regarded as selfishness.
Mm.
It is a total game changer when you realize that what you're doing is you're neglecting yourself. I meet with so many women in particular that their kid has an allergic reaction to a food, and they will bend over backwards to cook everything in relationship to this, or their husband needs something for work and they will wake up early and they'll go to bed late to prepare something, or and all of these moments when we're overextending ourselves to take care of the people around us is really about us not being able to set limits for ourselves and say, and I want you to think about it when I'm like, well, you do that for your kids, you do that for your husband. Do you do that for yourself? And or hey, where's like, well, I don't have time to meal prep. I don't have time to, but your kid just like had a gluten intolerance and you went out and baked all this bread and did at what point does that
Mm.
also include you?
Yeah.
And it's these eye-opening moments where we realize that I'm doing a tremendous job taking care of everybody else around me so they don't have emotional reactions, because so that they're okay, but ultimately I'm still not okay and I can't take care of myself.
And I think subconsciously, this is taught so early on. Like you said, it starts early as families. We see these things, right? Like as we grow up, and the way that, our moms may treat our dads, and and those needs are always coming, like their needs are always coming last. And so subconsciously, as we grow up, like that's kind of what we've have known to be quote unquote normal, I guess. Right. And so those are the same skill sets and whatnot that we adopt. And so it takes a lot of mindful effort. This is something that it took a lot for me to break the cycle that I was in. And it took a lot of mindfulness around it. But once you start to become hyper aware, because I was doing these things without even realizing I was doing these things, and breaking all of these boundaries that because when working with my mentor, I was like, okay, this is where I'm at now. This is where I'd love to become or love to get to. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to get to achieve any of these goals, I guess, if I can't even keep the commitments I'm putting forth to myself? But it's like, I couldn't keep the commitments because I didn't have boundaries in place to be able to do so. And so like the awareness around that, when that clicked for me, it was such a light bulb moment. But it's one of those things that it's easy to talk about. It is not necessarily easy to execute when you have to put these boundaries in place. Oh, you're muted, Anne. Sorry.
I got one over behind me trying to growl at something. I got somebody coming in out of the
Oh, no,
door for whatever reason. Um, I just said amen on that. And one really cool aspect of learning how to take responsibility for yourself, and it starts again very, very small. And I myself really struggled with this, and I was the person that I would burn the wick at both ends. I would stay up late to make sure that everybody's stuff was done, and then I'd wake up early to get my stuff done, and I'd be tired and a wreck the rest of the day, and maybe I wouldn't have enough. Like sometimes I would show up at work and I wouldn't bring my own food, but my kids' lunches were always packed because I'm a responsible parent, right?
Yep.
But
And then
then I
you're
was like,
building up resentment inside, like all this
yes,
resentment's building up, but it's because you refuse to put boundaries in place to begin with. Yeah.
yes. And now what happens, and again, this is for those of you that are struggling with this, this is going to be like, man, she's really selfish. And that's okay. You can judge me. But what happens now is I meal prep for myself. My exercise, I get that in unless one of my kids has something big that needs to happen. They need to get somewhere. There's an emergency, there's a surgery. I am getting my workout in before my day starts, before I start taking care of people. I've got my food already prepped. I sit down, I have breakfast, I do a morning devotional, I go to the gym, I come back, and then I take a shower, and then I go into work and I start taking care of people. And then I come home and I take care of my kids.
Yep.
And my kids know now, if they want me to do something, that it's going to have to fit around some of the things that I also need. Now, I still meet their needs, but I start first with my needs. And what I found about myself is I don't blow up my kids anymore. I virtually have not, and I get some sauciness. I get some
Sauciness from Anne? Really?
I,
I'd
I
like to
get
see the saucy side.
I've got a daughter that I call habanero spice, and she'll give it to me. And I stay really regulated. Like it doesn't throw me for a loop anymore. And I used to be one of those moms that I would break down every Friday because I was overworked and overwhelmed and cry about how nobody was helping me and yell and scream and do all the horrible things that I say to parents they can't do and shouldn't be doing. And now it virtually will never happen. I can't think of the last time I raised my voice at my kids.
And
I
that's what
can't
I
think
mean by showing up in a completely different light, right? Like you're able to show up 100% for everybody else around you when your cup is, and I know it sounds cheesy, but when your cup is full and there's
Yes.
just it's a different space in how you react. It's a different space in how you respond. It's a different space in how you perceive things, our emotions. I'm so much less emotional. I was the girl that I would just flip on the drop of a hat or a drop of whatever
Yep.
that saying is. And it just like my attitude would just like, it was almost instantaneous. And it was because all of this resentment was building up, but it was because I didn't have boundaries in place to begin with. And so when something happened that I allowed happen because I didn't have the boundary, then I would lose my shit basically. And then I'd have this guilt for losing my shit. And then it was just like this vicious loop that I was in because again, I didn't understand how to set boundaries to ensure that those things didn't happen to begin with. And so, yeah, there's huge. This is huge. I hope it's really a light bulb moment for a lot of people listening to this right now, because like I said, the ability to be able to get radically honest with myself and own the fact that all of these things were because I refused to set boundaries. And then the second I started setting boundaries and I owned that, but I was like, but you don't understand like this. And it's like, no, Nicole, this is a boundary that you refuse to set. And I promise you, the second you start setting these boundaries, and it was a game changer. It was a complete game changer, but it took me getting radically honest with myself. And it took me willing to, vocalize my needs. And I think as females, we struggle with that. We struggle admitting the fact that we could use some help, we could use some support, and we have needs as well.
Yep. And I want to just comment on when it comes to boundaries is that boundaries that we struggle with in life, that inability to say no to other people, the inability sometimes to say no to ourselves, that's mirrored in what happens with food.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I can't set limits outside of my relationship with my body and outside of my relationship with food, if I'm always saying, but this person has this, but now's not a good time for me to do this. Now's not a good time for me to set this limit. Now's not a good time for me to work out because they're going through this crisis, this moment. I'm going to do the exact same thing with food. Now's not a good time. We have this party. I don't want to do it over the holidays. But I don't want somebody to feel bad because they brought me something. They made me this homemade goodie. And I don't want that. Like I wanted them to see me eat it, even though it doesn't really, I don't like it. It doesn't fit in my goals for today. And so
huge, ladies. This
that
is so
ability to say no and set those limits, that ability to say yes to myself, that's what we're talking about here. That's what we're talking about food. That's what we're talking about exercise.
Yep.
I got to be able to say yes to myself when I wake up in the morning and no to staying in bed another 30 minutes because I know I'm going to feel better and I'm going to be a better human being by getting in my workout first.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Huge.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
And do you ever have moments where you didn't get your workout on because you decided maybe I'm going to sleep in? It's a rough moment. And, sometimes we need those moments. But do you ever have a
Never.
day that you,
No.
do you,
That was total
what are
sarcasm
you
if
talking
you're
about?
not watching this, obviously, on the Zoom or on the replay. But yes, I've had plenty of those moments for sure.
And, and do you ever notice that those are the days you're a little bit more short tempered? Like you
Mhm.
just kind of feel off kilter.
Yep. Oh, for sure. For sure. And I'm pissy because I'm pissed off at myself for breaking the promise I made to myself to, get up in the morning and do what I need to do. And so, and that usually it's more so I'm a little bit more short tempered because I'm, disappointed in myself and that's being reflected through others. And so and I've been able to regulate that a bit better, but yes, there is so much power to, like you said, keeping the commitments, but understanding that when you meet your needs, that everything else seems to flow like your whole day just flows better. And that's just not even the exercise component because people are like, start your day with exercise, everything, your endorphins are running. Yes, yes, there's a space of that getting up and, getting it in and moving your body. And that feels really good. But more so than that, I truly believe it's keeping the commitments that you make to yourself. At the end of the day, you are acknowledging that your needs matter and your needs should come first. And when we do that, then we just are better humans in general. We're just better humans in general.
And for those ladies watching that are the extreme ones that are in the burnout place, ironically, we're practicing the wrong no's and the wrong yeses, right? So when we're in a place and we're so miserable that we cannot even fathom to think about getting up and doing our workout again, there has to be other levels of no in there. There has to be some grace towards movement, towards self-care, and investing in some quieter and more gentle practices. So for those of us that have gotten into that place of complete and utter burnout. And what I'd like to argue is that that might even be an indication that there's some degree of compulsivity and there's too much rigidity around things. And that is very different than having healthy boundaries, because healthy boundaries they have absolutes, but they have some degree of compromise and flexibility.
Yes. Oh, that's an amazing point to bring up because I feel like there needs to be the flexibility because there is so much rigidity around, and particularly as females, if we're not doing things to the extreme, it's this all or nothing approach that produces all or nothing results. And this is where the burnout for so many come into play. And this is something I have to work through with a lot of my clients because they're like, but this worked and I felt amazing. This was great. And it's like, and I'm just going to throw out quote unquote, did you really feel great when you were eating 900 calories a day? And you're like, no, it was awesome. I did all these things. But it was awesome while you're getting the external validation that the scale was moving. But the second the scale stopped moving, it wasn't so awesome. And it caught up to the fact that, your body couldn't keep up with 900 calories a day. And so being able it truly is this all or nothing approach. So when you're all in and the scale's moving and you're getting the external validation, things are great. But the second the scale stops moving, your body can't keep up, then it's none of the things because we don't understand that the gray area and things. Like I said, it's not black, it's not white. We have to understand where to live in the gray and also make a distinguish against, like I said, I think people want to confuse. I'm trying not to put down Optavia, but you're all in and you think you feel great because you like what you're seeing on the scale, not necessarily because your body really feels great. I'm trying to find the words to get that out appropriately, but they were like escaping me for a second. But it's because again, there's no flexibility in between anything that they do. It's black or it's white. It's black or it's white.
Right. Right. And we get what's called an ego boost from results, right? So when it's not actual sustainable long-term change and we get those fast results, um, and I hear so many people talk about it because the slowness of the program, the slowness of even making lifestyle changes. You think about it though, globally, how slow it is. If you've spent most of your life staying in a place where you didn't like your body and it takes you a year, maybe two to get to a better place, that's not slow.
No,
That's actually
in comparison.
incredibly rapid,
Yeah.
but it's slow if we're going to compare it to a diet. And what we get from those extremes is we get a significant ego boost. People start noticing us.
Mhm.
We start feeling better. We dress differently. We start loving on our bodies while still punishing it because it looks the way it's supposed to, but it doesn't feel good except for the reinforcement that we're getting about how we look.
External. Yeah. Yeah. The dopamine hits that we get from that. I experienced so much of that when I was looking to compete, and you get down to a level of being shredded that obviously is quite noticeable. And like my identity started to become attached to not being able to go to the store without somebody stopping me and like, oh my God, your upper body, and complimenting me. Right. And so I was getting all of my worthiness from like complete strangers stopping me and be like, how, like, this is amazing. How did you do this kind of thing? And then when I started, putting body fat back on like a normal human being, and I didn't walk around shredded, and I wasn't getting people stopping me and giving me those compliments, like I went through a massive depression phase. Like
Mhm.
I like my worthiness was quite literally attached to strangers stopping me and telling me that I looked good. It was such a just egotistical, unrealistic way to live life. And, who you think you are and what you have to offer to this world was purely based around the fact that I had veins popping out of my arms. It was ridiculous. It was so ridiculous. And I think back to this now and the level of growth that has happened in between, obviously, like, like competing is a very extreme sport, but there's a lot of mental things that go into that, not just the physical aspect of it, but the mental aspect when you go to compete and having to get your body to a level of being so lean to looking like just a normal human being again. Right. And we look normal, but the mindset in and around normal, like my body dysmorphia was just at an all-time high is the way to put it.
Yeah.
And I quite literally, I went through probably, it was like 3 months of solid depression because people weren't stopping me at the store and giving me the validity that I was worthy because I had veins poking out of my arms. And so again, the extremes it's just crazy. It's crazy when when you go through such a transformation and you can look back at it now and it's like, I thought I felt amazing, but it's because my hormones, like I know, like when I had my lab work done, people were, like my hormone specialist was like, how are you even walking, Nicole? I'm like, what are you talking about? I feel
Oh,
fine. I feel fine. And they're like, no, you don't. And I was like, I feel fine.
wow.
But it
Wow.
was like, I didn't feel fine, but I liked the validation I was getting from other people. I liked what I saw in the mirror. And so that was the correlation of fine, but nothing about me was fine. Nothing. I had no energy. My hair was falling out in chunks. I had no sex drive. I was a
Mhm.
shell of a human being. And so, but again, that was because lack of boundaries. And that was extreme burnout at that point, extreme burnout at that point.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think this has been pretty fire. Do you have anything else to add to this? I hope this really like was some light bulb moments for a lot of people listening. And I know for me, it was a game changer when I truly like it clicked for me. I was like, oh shoot, hopefully I just knocked my microphone, you guys. Hopefully you didn't hear a big old clunk in there. But it was extreme. Like it was a light bulb moment for me when I really connected that I literally had zero boundaries set in place in my life. And the second I was able to implement those, it just was a game changer. So I really hope that there was a lot of connection there for some listening and maybe struggling with some of the same things, because when we're not, obviously we talked more so outside of the health and fitness space, but this translates, like Anne said, this translates into your food, this translates into your fitness space, into your training, into all aspects of life. So again, you guys, just want to thank everybody listening. We've had such overwhelming feedback from the podcast so far, and we truly hope just to continue to bring more value for you guys. I know we have a lot of amazing episodes planned in the works, but your support means absolutely everything to us. So if you guys have enjoyed this at all whatsoever, a 5-star review is always appreciated. Sharing this on your social media, tagging myself, Bouquet, or Anne. We just appreciate all the love, all the support, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Ciao.
If this is helpful, give me a like, follow me, or subscribe for more.